Donald Trump and the Republican Party continue to hope for the worst for America. Let's talk about it. As you know, Donald Trump and the Republican Party generally like to call themselves patriots. You'll see that word thrown around in MAGA circles a lot. But it's not true. It's not true at all. They are the furthest thing from patriotic. In fact, if you listen to them, they spend their time running down America. Certainly Donald Trump does. And they are continually hoping for the worst for America. And in fact, whenever there's good news, they're upset by it. So let's talk about a couple of things. The first is this hostage swap. This incredible victory for President Biden, for the United States, and for these hostages who were unjustly held for so long by Vladimir Putin in Russia. We learned yesterday that President Biden had been in long-term negotiations to secure their release. And yesterday, they were released. And it was a joyous occasion for not only them and their families, but really for all Americans. We should all rejoice in their release. But there are some people who were very upset by this. People who pretend to be patriots. Donald Trump and his MAGA cult were very, very upset yesterday upon learning about the release of those American hostages. And why were they upset about it? Well, because this was good news for President Biden. He had accomplished something really great. And Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans don't want anything great happening for America when President Biden is in office, or if anyone other than Donald Trump or a Republican is in office. Now, you would think that a patriotic American running for president would issue some sort of statement of support, but you would be mistaken. Let's take a look at the statement that Donald Trump issued immediately upon learning about the release of our American hostages.
So when are they going to release the details of the prisoner swap with Russia? How many people do we get versus them? Are we also paying them cash? Are they giving us cash? Please withdraw that question because I'm sure the answer is no. Are we releasing murderers, killers, or thugs? Just curious because we never make good deals at anything, but especially hostage swaps. Our negotiators are always an embarrassment to us. I got back many hostages and gave the opposing country nothing, and never any cash. To do so is bad precedent for the future. That's the way it should be, or this situation will get worse and worse. They are extorting the United States of America. They're calling this trade complex. That's so nobody can figure out how bad it is. Wah!
Now, did you notice anything missing from Donald Trump's statement about the release of our hostages? Did you see any expression of joy over their release? Did you see any expression of congratulation to these prisoners who had been released? Now, you wouldn't expect Donald Trump, petty little fool that he is, to actually congratulate the sitting president who orchestrated the release of those prisoners. Now, a serious person, a confident person, a patriotic American might congratulate the people, the Americans, the American president and his team who had successfully secured their release. But you wouldn't expect any such congratulations to come from Donald Trump. He is a very petty and small person. So when Donald Trump heard about the release of our prisoners, where did his thoughts immediately go to? Now, we patriotic Americans, our thoughts went to them, went to those people who had been so unjustly held as captives, as prisoners by a corrupt Russian government. Our hearts went out to them. Our thoughts and prayers went out to them. Not so Donald Trump. His thoughts were all about him. He immediately saw this through the prism of politics. What is this going to do for my chances to be reelected? I can't have anything good being done by Joe Biden because that might hurt my chances to be reelected. He doesn't give a damn about those hostages. He doesn't give a damn about their families. He doesn't give a damn about any Americans or anyone else for that matter. He cares only about himself. And so too that is true of his followers. Because if you watched Fox News, if you watch Newsmax or OAN, or if you listen to any right-wing MAGA podcasts, or watch or read any of these big right-wing MAGA accounts on social media, you will see them having this exact same reaction. No joy, no happiness, no congratulations, just anger. They are angry that these hostages were released because they think it might help Kamala Harris win the election. And one final thing about this, and I have something else to discuss. Donald Trump, not too long ago, promised that these hostages would never be released with Joe Biden as president. That Vladimir Putin would only release these hostages for him, for Donald Trump. So that if we wanted these hostages released, then we had to reelect Donald Trump. Otherwise, they would never be released. That really didn't age too well now, did it? Okay, so the second thing I want to discuss, just to show how Republicans don't want anything good for this country. And anything bad that happens, they celebrate. Now, we've gotten some economic numbers for the month of July. And the jobs report was a little, the jobs added to the economy were slightly lower than had been expected. And the unemployment rate ticked up a tiny bit. So the unemployment rate is up to 4.3%. And we added almost 115,000 jobs in the month of July. Now that was slightly lower than had been expected. And the unemployment rate was slightly higher than had been expected. And Republicans are now taking that and celebrating because they think it's bad news somehow. Of course, it's not bad news. It's really historically good news. But given that our economy has been booming, has been adding jobs and growing at such a rate, and that this is a tiny bit lower, that's not bad news. It's still good. Many countries would kill for these kinds of numbers. But MAGA Republicans take this, and really what they're doing is they're hoping. They're hoping that this is bad news. It isn't really bad news, but they're hoping that this portends bad news to come. They are trying to talk this into a recession, and they're saying that this is evidence of a recession. Why? Because they are dying for a recession. They are praying for a recession because they think that a recession will help get Donald Trump elected. They don't care what that actually does to people. They don't care the economic damage that a recession would cause, what it really means in terms of people's lives, people losing their jobs in a recession. They don't care about that. All they care about is getting Donald Trump reelected. So they're taking this news and hoping that it means that a recession is coming. It's not evidence of a recession. Let's take both of those numbers. 115,000, nearly 115,000 jobs added in July. That's a really good number. It's just slightly lower than was expected, but it's still a really good number. By the way, recession, what is a recession? A recession is 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth. We haven't had any negative economic growth. So there is no recession, just, in terms of facts and definitions, there's no recession. Anyways, 115,000 jobs added in the month of July alone. That's a good number. And as for the unemployment rate, 4.3%, that is historically a very low unemployment number. 4% unemployment is considered by economists to be essentially full employment because you never get down to zero. It's an impossibility. There are always people in between jobs and that kind of dynamic. You never ever get to zero unemployment. So 4% unemployment is considered full employment. It really doesn't get any better than that. We're at 4.3%. That is historically very, very low unemployment. And they're trying to paint this as dire economic news and a recession. I would point out to these people, not that they watch this channel, because they don't watch or listen to anything other than what they want to hear. So they want to hear that this is a recession and this is the worst economy ever. And if you're not telling them that, then they don't want to hear about it. So I know they're not listening. But what I would tell those people is to remind them, or tell them to begin with, because I'm sure they don't know this, is to tell them that the unemployment rate under Donald Trump went up to over 20%. Unemployment under Donald Trump went to the highest level since the Great Depression because of Trump's incompetent handling of the COVID pandemic. Unemployment right now is far, far less than it was when Joe Biden took over from Donald Trump. Is a recession coming? At some point in time, a recession will come because that's just inevitable. Is it coming anytime soon? I rather doubt it, but I don't know for sure. But I could tell you this, I certainly hope not, no matter who is president. I don't want the United States to go into recession, and I know you don't either. But Republicans do. Donald Trump does. Why? Because the last thing they are is patriotic. The people who call themselves patriots are the least patriotic among us. So that'll do it. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll talk to you again soon.